Good morning. Welcome back. And to those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Thelma Barker, President of the Independent Telecommunications Pioneers Association, National Capital Chapter. Today's Small Business GWACs virtual event, in collaboration with GSA, is a part of ITPA's ongoing and popular series of information exchange sessions. From in-person lunches to now remote sessions as part of our monthly virtual series. Today, we'll be discussing some of the successful GWACs to date and preview the upcoming new Polaris GWAC with our guest speakers from GSA. A little bit about ITPA. The Independent Telecommunications Pioneers Association is a nonprofit professional association created by and for the telecommunications industry. Dedicated to community service, ITPA has been serving the public on behalf of telecom companies since 1920. To help support some of our new season initiatives, we've created a mentor protege program of our very own. This program provides a unique pathway for young professionals within the first 10 years of their careers to join our organization, as well as to network and to serve their community. This new program will enable individuals to attend our events, learn about our industry, and lend new ideas and perspectives to our organization. Nominations for our next class are now open. If you'd like to nominate a potential protege from industry or government, please reach out to us for more information. A little bit more about the local charities and causes that ITPA NCC supports. Every year, our annual golf charity tournament has a team of veterans and service members from SMGA, which include those wounded or injured in post 9/11 military operations. Our annual contributions to our local Juvenile Research Diabetes Foundation, Mid-Atlantic chapter, help develop life-changing therapies, moving from development through to commercialization that lessen the impact of type 1 diabetes. This past giving season, we were able to double our fundraising goal with all of your support. We were able to raise over $7,000 for Project ELF. A heartfelt thank you again from all of us at ITPA NCC, as your generosity during this past holiday season is greatly appreciated. To continue supporting our local communities, the need for food assistance programs is now greater than ever. To help combat insecurity, we've kicked off our Capital Area Food Bank fundraiser, which I'll cover a little bit more about after the session. Speaking of our local chapter, ITPA NCC is thrilled to recognize the contributions and support of our platinum sponsors, Avaya Government Solutions, Comcast Government Services, Granite Government Solutions, Hughes, and Lumen. Our gold sponsors, Converge One, Graybar, Mettel, SUS Consulting, T-Mobile Secure Federal Operations, and Verizon, as well as our silver sponsors, BJJ and Associates, Collab 9, Corning, Equinix, GES, GBI, and Turning Point. We are grateful for our ongoing sponsorship support and thrilled to have an array of new sponsors this season. And now, before we begin, a few quick items of note. We welcome our friends and colleagues from the media. As a reminder, today's conversation is on the record. We thank you for the abundance of questions received during the event registration process, and our moderator will try to get through as many of them as possible. If you're having technical difficulties during the webinar, use the chat box in your toolbar to chat with our webinar host. If you would like a copy of today's presentation, please reach out to us following at ITPA NCC.org. Now, for today's speaker introductions, I'm pleased to introduce Steve Burberski from Collab 9. Steve is currently Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Collab 9 and leads a team for enterprise federal, SLED, IT, and telecom procurements. He is a recognized unified communications subject matter expert with more than 25 years of converged voice and data networking experience and spans the consulting, integrator VAR, OEM, and service provider verticals. Mr. Burberski has specialized in secure, distributed enterprise architecture and has designed and delivered integrated VoIP, unified communications, and contact center solutions for more than 17 years. A trusted advisor at the highest levels of leadership in federal agencies, Steve is also a subject matter expert in federal compliance, including FedRAMP, FISMA, HIPAA, PCI, and CGIS, as well as a published author and experienced media-facing professional for all things cloud. Steve actually discussed some of these topics earlier this month in an interview with John Gilroy on Federal News Network. The March 1st Fed Tech Talk covered past compliance programs and the pathway to some of the new standards that are being implemented to help address some of the intricacies that come with emerging technologies that will have to be incorporated into new compliance standards across the federal space. And now, I'm happy to introduce fellow ITPA NCC board member and chair of our web committee, Steve Burberski. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Thelma. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. That was very nice. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We really appreciate everyone's support. We have another great event today. I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Keith Nakasone. Mr. Nakasone is the Deputy Assistant Commissioner, IT Acquisition within the Office of Information Technology category, that's ITC, and GSA'S Federal Acquisition Service. Everybody knows it as FAST. The Federal Acquisition Service provides buying platforms and acquisition services to federal, state, and local governments for a broad range of items from everything from office supplies to motor vehicles, information technology, and telecom products and services. Quite the gamut. As an organization within FAST, ITC provides access to a wide range of commercial and custom IT products, services, and solutions. The Office of IT Acquisition provides oversight of strategy development, internal training and acquisition workforce, and system support for executing ITC's acquisition for some of the largest in the government, such as GSA's multiple award schedule, information technology, IT government-wide acquisition contracts, also known as GWACs, the telecommunication contracts such as networks and EIS, Enterprise Information Solutions. Additionally, the office establishes training and development programs to ensure trained, engaged, innovative, and forward-thinking acquisition workforce. Mr. Nakasone started his civil service career in 1989, specializing in the field of procurement with an emphasis in telecommunications and IT services, hardware and software. Prior to joining ITC, Mr. Nakasone served as Senior Procurement Executive at the FCC, overseeing acquisitions and procurement, contracting officers, and contracting officers representative certification programs, as well as being responsible for the small business goals for the agency. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Carlton Shufflebarger. Mr. Shufflebarger is the Acting Director of IT Services, a subcategory within the Information Technology category, ITC, Federal Acquisition Service. The Federal Acquisition Service provides buying platforms and acquisition services to federal, DoD, state, and local governments for, as we said before, a broad range of items, office supplies, IT, telecom, products, and services. Mr. Shufflebarger is responsible for a portfolio of contracts that offer government agencies a diverse set of IT services valued at over $15 billion annually. These contract vehicles include Alliant 2, 8A, STARS 2, VETS 2 and GSA's multiple award schedule special item numbers, SINs 132-50, 51, 52, 56, and 20. Mr. Shufflebarger has held several diverse positions within the ITC as the Acting Deputy Assistant Commissioner for ITC, Deputy Director, Office of Telecommunications Support, and Deputy Director of Portfolio Management. During this time, he led several important ITC initiatives, such as the transition to a new operating model and developing business approaches in budgeting, strategic planning, communications, and IT tools for a new organization. Prior to joining the ITC, Carlton was Director of Business Development for GSA's General Supply and Services, GSS. There, he assisted the global supply transition to a new business model, in addition to marketing GSA's personal property program and all non-IT MAS schedules. He began his career with GSA as the Business Management Director in the Center for Innovative Acquisition Development, also within GSS, where he was instrumental in leading the adoption of new strategic direction for the Acquisition Center. Before coming to GSA, Carlton worked for the United States Postal Service for more than 20 years in various field headquarters, staff and management position in marketing, strategic management, and operations. Thank you, Thelma. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So,
yes, thank you. Well, great. This is good morning to all. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited about our presentation today. If we can roll to the next slide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you kind of an overview of our portfolio and where we are, what we have accomplished over the past year. And then we're going to roll into some of the things that we're doing with the portfolio as we move forward. So over the past year, during the pandemic, we saw our portfolio increase. And from this year, our business volume actually exceeded $30 billion, which is a huge step in our IT portfolio. And so couple of the things that was trending from last year to today is we made some significant changes within the portfolio. We've injected emerging technologies. We've strategically implemented some changes to the special item numbers, as well as consolidating the multiple award schedule under one solicitation. And we saw more effort from our partners, industry partners, actually joining the IT portfolio and the IT schedule. So we did see an increase there. We also saw a huge increase on the transactions that we're doing. For example, several hundred additional new industry partners onboarded, as well as tens of thousands of modifications that was done to the schedule to accommodate going down to a single solicitation, and also other industry partners joining other special item numbers under the schedules program, which hence increased some of the volume that we've seen within the IT category. Next slide. So some of the things that are coming up, there's some new executive orders that we have to consider as we move forward within the IT category. As you can see there, we have the America Supply Chain, the green technology, tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad, as well as the Made in America. So as new executive orders come out, we're assessing and we're seeing how we're going to inject it into our portfolio as we move forward. So pay attention to some of the things that are coming up. We normally highly engage when we have strategic changes. We use the GSA Interact board, etc. We engage with our industry partners, forums such as these, to get the message out. So we'll continue to monitor as we shift and change according to the leadership changes that are to come. Next slide. So as we look at our portfolio, one of the things that you'll see highlighted that we're really taking a look at is the IT security. So as you look at our framework and you look at how we're building out our portfolio, security, as you know, has been coming up to the front, meaning that everything that we do through our acquisitions solutions will have that eye of consideration, with a more eye, I should say, of looking at IT security. So it's that value on the processes that we inject for from not just doing the self-attestation, from looking at things from just checking a block, but more of that verification, validation, and certification process through the entire life cycle of a acquisition solution. So you'll see some of those changes coming forward within our government-wide acquisition contracts, as well as at the order level. Next slide. So when we look at 5G, a lot of discussion has been going around about how is 5G going to impact the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure moving forward. And what we see is, I think right around January 19th, I believe NTIA.gov dropped the 5G implementation plan. So if you have not seen the 5G implementation plan, it's now out there on the NTIA.gov site. And we will continue. There's a list of activities that are going to be performed within that implementation plan, and GSA has a role as well in that plan moving forward. Next slide. So there's been a lot of discussion around cybersecurity maturity model certification, CMMC program for the Department of Defense. And so one of the main questions I've been asked is, why is GSA involved in the process of implementing CMMC and supporting the Department of Defense and beyond? When we look at the framework of CMMC, it's really based on the NIST standards as well as some of the federal acquisition regulation requirements. And as we move forward, what we're doing is we're raising that education and awareness through our IT GWACs. So the new GWACs that we're rolling on and incorporating into our project also supports the Department of Defense. So when we talk about the government-wide acquisition contracts, the new ones that we're building, we're saying CMMC will be in scope, but at the order level, that is where those those order requirements will dictate whether or not CMMC is required. So there's basically 5 levels within CMMC. And at that order level, as DoD deploys and goes through their process of identifying their projects and programs, we will work alongside with them. And if they use one of our GWACs, they will be able to, at the order level, dictate what level certification they need for each of the different programs. So again, in scope within the GWAC, but the requirements will be built at the order level. So, there was some discussion, well, is CMMC going to be a requirement for all? It is based on agency requirements, and we have the flexibility to build a vehicle that will allow that kind of flexibility at that level. So I just wanted to make that point because there was some clarification and misunderstanding about how we're going to support the whole of government as we build out our acquisition vehicles. And this is another tool in the toolkit that will be built into our future GWACs. And next slide. I believe this is where my colleague Carlton will take over and provide you the rest of the briefing.
Yes, thank you, Keith. As was mentioned before, I'm the acting director of IT services in the IT category in the Federal Acquisition Service, and I work. We have a number of subcategories, we call them, in the IT category. Like there's a hardware subcategory, and then of course there's the telecommunications subcategory that manages the EIS and the networking contracts, and then I'm responsible for the group that really is involved with IT related services, such as consulting and outsourcing. As you can see from this slide, if we look at the entire IT market in the government of $87 billion using FY20 numbers, About 47 billion of that is allocated to the IT services subcategory. So not all that goes through GSA. That's the size of the total subcategory across the government. So it's a very sizable piece of the government spend in the technology area. And about a little over 15 billion of that spend through the IT services subcategory across the government goes to small businesses. And about a third of that goes through GSA vehicles to small businesses. About $5 billion last year in government spend went through GSA's and ITC's IT services category contracts. So that just gives you some, we're not bragging, it just gives you some context to the magnitude of the IT services market and the importance of small business in that market. We would like to grow both, we would like to grow the small business share of that, and Polaris, which I'll be talking about more later, is one of our key initiatives to provide more opportunities for small businesses. You can proceed. Thank you. This is a snapshot of what I call the portfolio for which I'm responsible in IT services, and my team and I are responsible. We have the government-wide acquisition contracts, which people are pretty familiar with. I think Alliant 2 is a pretty well-known brand name, and it's obviously the follow-on to its predecessor of Alliant, and Alliant 2 is a very, very popular GWAC. All these GWACs are very popular. STARS 2, 8A STARS 2. Now, of course, Alliant 2 is for we call it the unrestricted GWAC because large enterprises participate in that. Although there's a subcontracting goal for the industry partners, and 50% of their subcontracting dollars have to go to small businesses. So, and Alliant 2 has actually exceeded that. So even with Alliant 2, there's some significant money going to small businesses. 8A STARS 2 is a very popular government-wide acquisition vehicle, a contract, and it was so popular that it actually reached its full ceiling allocation last year, and GSA was able to work with SBA and increase that ceiling. 8A STARS 2 comes to an end on August the 30th of this year, so we're eagerly working on a successor GWAC there, STARS 3, and we expect to award STARS 3 this summer. And of course, VETS 2 is a GWAC we have set aside, for service disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and that's another popular GWAC. And also, there are a number of, as Keith mentioned, there are a number of SINs under the GSA IT category schedule, or the GSA IT category on the schedules, and IT professional services. Health IT is a real big one right now, particularly since the events of the past year with the pandemic. We have solutions for automated contact centers and also training and some electronic commerce, and so that's a big part of our portfolio. So there are a couple of gaps here, and Polaris STARS 3 will be, like I mentioned, will be the follow-on to STARS 2, and then Polaris will fill in really as a replacement for the Alliant 2 small business GWAC that's expired. And one of the questions had to do with are we canceling the Alliant 2 small business? And the answer is yes, we did cancel that. GSA opted to cancel that GWAC last year, that solicitation, and Polaris is, we think, a more innovative. Polaris gives us an opportunity to provide some innovation and modernization to the small business GWAC and the Alliant in our whole portfolio of small business GWAC. So with that, you can proceed to the next slide. So let's talk about Polaris. That's the topic of the day, and it's a great interest. It's a small business, multiple award ID, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. We named it Polaris. We actually had an internal contest, and a member of Keith's acquisition team came up with the name that of Polaris. And we really like the name because it references the guiding light in the night sky, the star that people have used for eons to find their way. And so it does include a small business set aside, which Alliant to Small Business and Alliant Small Business also did. But in addition to a small business set aside, we're also providing, looking at including hub zone businesses and also women-owned small businesses. Those two socioeconomic categories do not have their own GWACs. And so instead of doing separate GWACs for hub zones and women-owned small businesses, we decided to incorporate set-asides for them in the Polaris. And we want to build, you can, yeah, that's good. You can stay on this one. Polaris, we want to build on success of the small business GWACs and the Alliance Small Business GWAC that was the predecessor. We want to leverage some best practices we saw on the STARS 3 solicitation, the way that we are proceeding with that acquisition. We want to expand the IT small business industrial base. And by that, I mean, one of the reasons we opted to create Polaris was we thought it gives us an opportunity to provide for more IT modernization. It gives us an opportunity to really refresh the requirements and provide access to federal agencies to really state-of-the-art, leading edge small business providers of emerging technologies. And so we want to, our goal is to include small businesses and connect with small businesses who typically don't play in the government space, or, I use the term ecosystem, but we really want to expand that, both to bring in more emerging technology firms, but also, given the emphasis on equity and contracting, we think there are communities of small businesses out there who are typically missed and don't participate in our government acquisitions, and we really want to use Polaris as an opportunity to address that. We're doing a number of novel things internally to accelerate the award. We recognize we don't have a small business set aside in our GWAC program, so we're really eager to get this into place. And obviously, everybody's concerned about the customer experience, and we're building some enhancements in here to make it easier for agencies. And one is to allow them to access emerging technology firms, but also access small businesses and the women-owned small businesses and the hub zone, so they don't have to go through different contracts. And I've talked about IT modernization. It's really obviously of primary importance to the government and certainly to GSA. And we think Polaris gives us the opportunity to provide solutions in that area. I just want to look at my notes here to see some of the things. If you could, just stay there. In terms of IT modernization, some of the things that we're looking at would be like cybersecurity, which Keith mentioned, the CMMC, supply chain risk management, quantum computing, and what one of the things we're trying to do, we will be doing more frequent on-ramps than we've done in the past, because we want to refresh the pool, because what's emerging technology today won't be emerging technology at the end of this GWAC. So We are looking, one thing I haven't mentioned is we are also looking at ways to leverage the 876 authority to not have pricing at the contract level. And we're working our way through that. And we still have a lot of, I guess, a lot of questions to answer and some things to address, but that is something that we want to include in this GWAC. And I believe I'm going to end it there for the sake of time so we can go to the Q&A. And I believe that was my last slide. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Keith and Carlton. This has been a wealth of information this morning. I was just, Carlton, right before you ended, I was making a note about the, did you say it was 876 or H76?
8, the number 8.
876.
My West Virginia dialect catches up with me sometimes. So the 876, it's in the NDAA regulation, and Keith can speak poetic about it, but it allows for not having pricing at the contract level, which we think will give a lot of flexibility both to industry and to the agencies.
Absolutely. Keith, we are okay on time. Did you want to expound a little bit more on that?
Right. So from an opportunity with Polaris, what we're trying to do is be leverage and lean forward on the best practices, as well as providing maximum flexibility in the process, right? And so this is one of the things that we want to try to do, is be creative and innovative in the process so that we can reach, one, maximize the pool, two, be allowed to see where the art of the possible is in creating that flexibility at the order level. And, you know, there's a lot of questions on how we'll do pricing evaluation, et cetera. We have a number of tools and ideas that we can do that. And because we're still going through the process, we receive some questions around it. We want to get through those questions. And that's why we released the draft solicitation on Polaris, so we could gain insight from industry as well as other industry agency partners, so that we will be able to digest and understand frame of reference from all different the supplier base as well as agencies. So this is why we want to have that active engagement and release information as much as possible, so we can get as much feedback as possible through this process.
Okay. Very good news, very encouraging. Also, the note about on-ramp opportunities. I'm sure that our business partners are excited to hear about that as well. So, Jason, I could actually steal your thunder, but I'm not going to do so. So I'm going to pause with my questioning. And thank you again, Carlton and Keith. And now I'd like to introduce Jason Friend. Mr. Friend is the founder and CEO of Converge One Government Solutions. Jason leads a growing organization that provides unified communications and digital transformation solutions to government customers. An industry veteran, Jason started with Northern Telecom and has held both operations and sales roles throughout his career. He began working with federal government customers in 2007 when he joined Shared Technologies, which later became Aero Systems Integration, and was eventually acquired by Converge One. In 2019, Jason spearheaded the effort to create Converge One Government Solutions as a separate, wholly owned subsidiary focused on federal customers, and now leads the organization as its CEO. With the rest of the Converge One Government Solutions leadership team, Jason is responsible for corporate development, activities, business development, strategic planning, and partnerships, new venture development, acquisitions, and financial management. Jason, thank you for joining us today as our Q&A moderator. Over to you.
Thank you, Thelma. My thanks to the rest of ITPA. Very happy to be here today. Good afternoon, Carlton and Keith. Great presentation, and we very much appreciate you sharing that with us. We will go ahead and get started. I think we have a number of questions, and some of these I think we've touched on already, but we'll go through the questions that we've received from both government and industry, and we'll see how many we can get to today. Just for everybody's note, any unanswered questions will be answered and transmitted after the webinar concludes. So our first question is from government. What is GSA doing to engage with industry on Polaris? And what are the best ways to stay informed on all things related to that vehicle?
I'll let Carlton take that one first.
Yeah, I'll kick that off. We're actually trying to be pretty, we're pretty, I won't say aggressive, but we're very eager to engage with the industry. We had a kickoff event in, I believe, August of 2020, where we announced that we were developing a new small business GWAC. We didn't even have a name at that time. And since then, our acquisition and program team have set up we've set up an Interact site, small business community of interest on GSA's Interact site. And I believe the URL to the Interact site is in the last slide. We've had the team, and we post quite a bit to that site. We've also released a draft RFP December the 31st, and we had there was a 30-day comment period, and we received over 3,000 comments. So there's quite a bit of interest, and we've been working through those comments and sorting through them. And we just recently posted some frequently asked questions to the Interact site, to that small business community on Interact, with some of the most common questions that came up from the feedback with the draft RFP. The team itself, as I was starting to say, the team itself on the both acquisition and program team, they're engaging with the industry. They have and agencies, and we have a email address, which is Polaris@gsa.gov, and I don't know if I can drop that in a chat so people can see it, but if not, I'll make sure Thelma gets it. I'm not sure that made it to our slide. And we are connecting. We're also engaged. Keith and I have been doing our road show, so to speak, in the era of a pandemic. And I spoke at the AFCEA keynote for the Northern Virginia chapter that was well attended. And then we've also been on panels at the Coalition for Government Procurement annual training conference. And Keith and I, we spoke at an Asian American Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sure I'm missing some, but we're also working with ACT-IACT. They are creating a working group focused on Polaris, and they actually have their kickoff meeting this afternoon. So we're engaged with them, and we're also starting to work with an association called the Alliance for Digital Innovation that is focused on modernizing government technology and also expanding the small business ecosystem, or the number of small businesses working with the government. So, and there'll be more of that. We really do want to engage with the industry and with the agencies as we start to build out this GWAC. So, Keith, anything you want to bring up or that I missed? Or?
No, I think you covered that one very well. We can move to I see a list of questions, so we'll keep moving on. If we have to come back to that one, we will.
No, that was great information. Thank you, Carlton. So the next question is from industry. With the new Biden administration in place, are there any expected changes coming to GSA's GWAC portfolio?
So again, with the executive orders that was presented in the presentation, there's a number of things that are under advisement, as well as we look at emerging technologies and we look at our supplier base, some things may definitely have some impact and some changes. But we're, as far as the way we have our Polaris strategy laid out, as far as a lot of the things that have been addressed in the draft solicitation, we don't see much of that changing from a requirements perspective. What we really tried to do in Polaris is reach the broadest level as possible, as well as having those emerging technologies available within the GWAC itself. So as we look at our portfolio, we always say that when we build out these government-wide acquisition contracts, when we build out our schedule program, not everything is equal. What we try to do is reach as much as the supplier base, but also have that continuous engagement and as well as adopting of emerging technologies. So when you look at the schedules program, that's open 24/7. We never shut down the schedules program. So as new vendors come available and as new industry partners introduce new emerging technologies, there's always an on-ramp process. It never stops, right? Whereas when we build GWACs, there's open seasons, there's what I say, there's phases in that process. So sometimes there's a catch-up process within the GWACs. But having said that, that's why we have all the different acquisition vehicles, because they're staged for specific requirements, mission requirements, as well as having some flexibility to inject that emerging technologies along the way. So as we move forward, we'll have that, we can still act in that agile fashion, right? Having that flexibility. So if executive orders drop, we would be, that affects the IT portfolio, we will be able to inject that requirements into the different acquisition vehicles that we have.
Great. So this question is from government. With the increased attention to and demand for IT as a service, do any of the GSA GWACs support ITAS?
That's a great question. So I'll start, and Carlton, you can fill. IT as a service is a really broad term. So when we look at, I'll use this as an example. Under our multiple award schedule, we have the cloud special item number, where we have cloud solutions. And when we look at the requirements, we see some agencies leveraging the government-wide acquisition contracts, such as Alliant. Some are using the schedules. And basically what we try to do is help and guide the customers to saying, what is the best acquisition vehicle to produce what they're building, to meet their mission requirements. So when high broad terminologies are in play, it's not just necessarily looking at, we actually take a look at what are the requirements? What are they trying to accomplish? What is the desired output and outcomes that they're trying to achieve? Is it a phased approach over time where they need some flexibility in the way they're phasing their IT modernization efforts? Is it isolated down to a specific area within the IT portfolio, within a subcategory? So these are the things that we're looking at, but the cloud special item number is really the focus for X as a service. And in the GWACs, we also have the terms very broad so that we will have some flexibility there as well. Carlton, anything that you wanted to add there?
I just want to add that really is IT as a service, or anything as a service, is something that is on our minds a lot, and where that's going. And I know I work for Alan Hill. If any of you know Alan Hill, who used to run the telecom group in ITC, and now is the deputy assistant commissioner of the category. Is Keith's colleague, who's the lead of acquisition. And I know that's something Alan and I and Keith talk about a lot, about where is IT going. And because in the past we thought of IT services as really consulting and outsourcing, but as we go forward into the future, more things that line's going to get blurred as to what's a service and what's not a service. And that's one of the reasons we are interested in more frequent on-ramping to keep our pools refreshed. But Keith, you really said it well, so thanks.
So we have another question from industry, specifically relating to telecommunications and unified communications. How can we grow the small business presence in this area?
That's a great question. You know, a lot of things from the emerging perspective, and this is where what we're hoping. And when we look at, I'll use this example of the 5G efforts that are going on, right? The implementation plan has been released. I'm hoping that small businesses are actually looking at the implementation plan and looking at the list of activities that are under there, as well as working with the different major supplier base, right? And this is key, where they have specific niche areas or specialized areas within the telecommunication space. You know, we see a lot of conversions happening. We see a lot of opportunity where they can leverage. And so as these new strategy plans drop, implementation plans get released, what I'm hoping is that people are, the industry base is following what's actually happening, how things are going to be deployed in the future. Because when we look at the indicators, a lot of the 5G activity is starting in those smart cities. Well, how are they building out that smart city? What are the steps that the cities, the states, et cetera, are using to deploy and build out that capability? What is some of our agency partners, Department of Defense, what are they doing on their base at the base and installation level? So as we look at those opportunities and as we see things come through, scanning the beta.sam on where, release of requests for information, or draft solicitations are being produced, looking for those keywords and searching on what agencies are doing within their area or their mission. So when you move forward, we're hoping that you're using all avenues to start to look at how things are changing, what opportunities exist, and where do they find themselves within the industrial base. So there's a lot of opportunities for small businesses, but there's key indicators on where government is headed. And, not only looking at the federal level, but what's happening at federal, state, local level as well, because they all come together. So when we look at opportunities such as the E911, when we look at large scale telecom programs, where is that opportunity? Some people are concentrating more on the construction build out area, where they're just focused on the infrastructure side, cable systems, etc. Some people are focused on the satellite area. So it's really, how do you take the implementation plan, break it down, and see where they fit within the larger scale of competing in that space? Carlton?
I don't think I have anything to add there, Keith. You did quite a great job explaining that. So great advice.
So Keith, as a follow-up to that, so you mentioned working with DoD. What is GSA doing specifically to work with DoD to sort of support their evolving vision for IT with the emerging technologies, AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, those types of technologies?
So that's a great question, because there's different parts of our GSA organization that it's working with. For example, I'll use the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, the JAIC, over at the DoD. We have our partners over in the TTS area and the community of practice, where we have those active engagements where we're partnering and understanding the requirements, what they're challenges or opportunities that they have, and we're looking at how we can broaden that to others. So within the community of practice with AI and ML, we're looking at, if there's some best practices that we can learn through the JAIC and the DoD, and how we're looking to that is how can we further that best practices to the other agencies, so that when we look at our acquisition solutions, we can build at the larger scale, not just for a single entity, but we're looking at how we can provide these solutions moving forward within our acquisition vehicles and beyond. The other thing is when we look at those capabilities, for example, under the multiple award schedule, we have the contact center special item number. What we're trying to do is build capability within the acquisition portfolio with those emerging technologies embedded, meaning it's not a separate requirement. So if you're looking for a contact center, the AI, ML, the bots, the robotic process automation, all of those emerging technologies are injected into the special item number, so that when you build your requirements and you state your desired outputs and outcomes, the success is already the opportunities and that injection of emerging technologies are already considered, so that you're expanding that ability to accelerate and build that solution over time. So, it's not that one and done. We're continuously using that model to look at what's on the horizon, but how can we inject and phase in those technologies over time, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Thank you. We have a question from government. Is there an on-ramp period for any of the GSA GWACs?
Keith, I'll take it and you can follow up if embellished. That really varies. That depends upon the individual GWAC. Each GWAC kind of has its own terms and conditions, and that's a decision that the contracting officer makes based upon the circumstances. We don't anticipate at this time on-ramps for our current GWACs, but again, that VETS 2 is coming up on the in about 2 years. VETS 2 reaches the end of its first term, and we'll be needing to make a decision about that. Do we do an on-ramp there? So that really varies by the GWAC, whether we do an on-ramp and the circumstances. And Keith, is there anything you want to embellish on, or you think I covered it?
Yeah, again, it's on a case-by-case basis, and it's really GWAC driven, right? And it's from a opportunity perspective, if one of the questions is, how do we look at when we need to offer a open season, but also we're looking at a timing perspective, right? It's like if you're hitting your ceiling, or if you're at the end of the term of that contract, does it really make sense to do an open season? So we take everything into consideration. But like I said, when we look at the opportunities abroad and we look at all the acquisition vehicles, we want to ensure that if we do have industry partners out there that are trying to get their technology solutions into the federal government space, the IT schedule is always open, right? Or I should say the entire schedule program is always open, because we do have the professional services side, the general services and supplies, as well as IT. So I say don't limit just the focus on GWACs, but look at the opportunities at large, right? So if you have opportunity, have those active engagements with us so that we can figure out where is the best place to inject early on in the process. So those active engagements are really important to have with government and for agencies as well. If they see other opportunities and they're dealing through that market research process, and they find, hey, there's a number of part of the vendor community that is underrepresented, that is good feedback for us to consider, so that we can do that outreach and figure out how to do that active engagement and to help that discussion of how do they move forward.
Jason, I think we have time for one more question.
Great. So final question, what are some of the things that small businesses can do to prepare for Polaris in particular?
Okay, great question. I will start with this. Number one, when we release the draft and the future iterations, read it cover to cover. When the final drops, and there's a lot of things that can be done really early on. And it's really reading it from cover to cover and understanding how to respond to it. There's decision points. Look at the requirements. Are you able to meet those requirements? Is there things that you need to do up front that presents a problem? Let us know early on, so that if there is an interpretation issue, if there's something that we can help navigate or address with the contracting officer, early on is the most important key, is those questions that we engage early, not on the day your proposal is due. So a lot of those engagements, early engagements, I always say benefit. And that's why when we released the draft, it was to send the signal, hey, something is coming. Let's engage and let's drive to a better solution set, right? So that we have that opportunity to engage early in the process and make changes. If there are interpretation issues, we can address it in the formal and final solicitation. And through that process, we can actually help minimize and reduce the protest risk as well. And understanding the requirements up front is key. And so that I wanted to ensure that we really focus on look at every section cover to cover in the solicitation and respond accordingly.
Well, I know there's a huge amount of interest in that vehicle, so that's very, very helpful. Thank you. So Keith and Carlton, we thank you very much on behalf of industry. I can tell you that, this has been very informative, very beneficial information. GSA obviously has, a huge amount of activity going on and some very important things coming up. So we appreciate you taking the time to share some of that with us today.
But we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here and have enjoyed it.
So Thelma, over to you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Keith and Carlton, for such a robust conversation with us today. And I'm asking everyone to join me in a virtual round of applause for our guest speakers. And I also want to send a special thank you to GSA, who has been a long-time term partner of ITPA NCC. We can always count on engagement from GSA on a seasonal basis. Once again, a special thank you to all of our sponsors for the season. We greatly appreciate our platinum sponsors, Avaya Government Solutions, Comcast Government Services, Granite Government Solutions, Hughes, and Lumen. Our gold sponsors, Converge One, Graybar, Metel, SUS Consulting, T-Mobile Secure Federal Operations, and Verizon, as well as our silver sponsors, BJJ and Associates, Collab 9, Corning, Equinix, GBI, GES, and Turning Point. With an unprecedented year almost behind us, we are all looking forward to the breath of fresh air we know as spring. Our virtual season will continue with our April Cyber Summit Forum. In May and June, we welcome back Army Corps of Engineers CIO Devarius Peoples to continue and complete his three-part series on how to lead teams to goals. Trial by fire, mobility innovation at our nation's call, and forward thinking, how to realize the net gains. Then on July the 12th, we will host our annual ITPA NCC annual golf tournament. More details to come. As the coronavirus spread across the Washington region, a sudden and significant spike in the need for emergency assistance directly impacted the community. Those already struggling with food insecurity sought to create food reserves, and those who were newly unemployed sought help for the very first time. The numbers of families seeking food assistance has increased from approximately 350 to over 1,200 on a weekly basis. We'll be matching contributions dollar for dollar up to $3,000 between now and May 1st for our local capital area food bank. A link to the page on our website where you can donate will be hyperlinked on all of our digital platforms. For more information on donations to support this special drive, beginning Monday, March 22nd, please visit our website and click on our designated COVID charity page to donate directly. On April 22nd, ITPA NCC joins Electrosoft again to present the third installment of the Cybersecurity Transformation Summit series. This virtual half-day technology webinar focuses on meeting the cyber challenges for the future. As part of our ongoing educational series, this 3-hour on-the-record session will showcase government and industry thought leaders with focus on identity, credential, and access management, and zero trust. Through our distinguished keynote and 2 panels, attendees will gain valuable insights. The first panel, moderated by Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller, will shed light on the importance and increasing challenges of ICAM as communications and information sharing technologies continue to advance. The second panel, with moderator Chris Dorbeck, executive editor of GovLoop's Dorbeck Insider, will explore why zero trust is rapidly becoming the security model of choice for many organizations and some of the implementation challenges. All sponsors and attendees will receive a final white paper from each panel discussion. And in the spirit of partnership and giving back, I'm excited to announce that Electrosoft will be making a donation to ITPA NCC's STEM Education Grant Fund at the close of the event. You will not want to miss this dynamic forum. Mark your calendars for April 22nd, 2021. In closing, a special ITPA thanks to all of our speakers, sponsors, and special attendees for joining us today. We have a great spring season in store for you. Please don't miss our April event. And again, $1 donated to the Capital Area Food Bank drive equates to 2 meals that they can purchase for this great cause. Please visit our website at itpancc.org and follow us on our virtual platforms for the latest organization, webinar, and charity updates. Please stay safe and have an amazing rest of your day. We'll see you next month.